And I have a number of builders who come to me and say, oh, my client wants to push this wall out and push this wall out, and I often say, why? Do we have to do that? Because 9 times out of 10, the minute that you extend and the client, even if it's just a metre, the cost of doing that outweighs some of the benefit or even the value add on those properties. So the client will have a wee freak out moment and go, no, I'm not doing that project. But actually, if we reverse it and understand what they need and what they want, we can show them how they can do that and spend more money inside rather than just going add on and then still have an old house or a cold house or, all of those types of things. And helping clients understand where they should spend their money, what's going to be the best return on investment for them. Obviously bedrooms, kitchens and bathrooms, cell houses, right? So it's making the most of those spaces and helping them maximise, because sometimes it's just that they want that for their own, for their family home. Sometimes it's we need to make sure that we're maximising it so that they can then loan against that for other things, or it's one of how many properties, or it's what their long-term goals are, what's best for the area, and looking at that in a kind of a more generalised holistic sense rather than just the design itself. I'm Kctest and Director of CA Architecture. All things architecture from small projects that might not technically need a consent, right through to multi-million dollar homes, commercial projects, community projects, and super homes, healthy homes, energy efficient homes. All in one kind of bundle. I talk to clients a lot about the benefit of good design first, contextually, on the site, sun, all that type of thing, but then also making sure that we're designing efficiently in terms of space planning, sizes, making sure that we're not just designing a monstrosity when we don't need to, so really questioning people on what they want and why they want it and how they want to live in their home, and then being able to design and curate the house accordingly to that rather than the list of rooms they think they want. And then the more we do that, the smaller the footprint can be, the more functional the spaces can be, and then we have more room to mould and play with the fabric of the building and the energy efficiency, rather than if we just splurge on our square meterage from the start, then we're less likely to be able to incorporate the energy efficient principles that we want to have. So always trying to question that and understand that from a fundamental level first and foremost, and then on an educational spectrum of building code standard, building code minimum to passive house certification, where does the client sit in the ideal principles initially when they come in versus do they aspire to more, do they want to know more, would they like to be educated on that more, and start to kind of massage how we play on that and where we get to. A lot of it, of course, does come down to cost too, and helping them understand what they could do or what steps they could take down that spectrum, down that line in the most cost-effective manner. But again, starting from scratch around the design. Yeah, education is a big thing, but when we see a client who wants to build energy efficient, airtight, they generally come with a lot of previous knowledge. Sometimes true, sometimes not true. Sometimes there's some beliefs in there that we might need to unravel, which can be quite interesting, particularly around where they see the most benefit along that continuum. And I ram home airtightness as number one, when sometimes they might have a different different number one, or a different way that they think about how a house performs and why it performs the way it does, and a bit more building science focused, or a bit more the alignment of the values and thoughts around how that works and trying to be on the same page. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some people think they know more than the people trying to get the house to work for them, which is always a fun one. The design guide is, so what's it called again? The
Super Home Design Guide?
Yeah, the Super Home Design Guide is really helpful because we can then allow clients to look at that, to say, here, read this, or have a look through that, if there are those type of clients, which a lot of people that are in super home energy efficiency, passive principles type of design are more educated, or they have more interest in being educated about it. So therefore, having that design guide really helps me to give them a place to go that's not just me saying it, and backs up what I'm trying to educate them on, which is really helpful, because you get all sorts of things, all sorts of interesting things that people think they know about, or they put ahead of other things, and it can be,
so a lot of what you do is actually a bit of sort of,
and focusing on what's important, how they can achieve air tightness, what methodologies do we do, and how do we do that. And having done my passive house studies, that was really helpful for educating clients and trying to myth bust, but there was no kind of real literature to then for clients to at a level they could understand. So this is where the Super Home Design Guide is that's just the best thing that we can have to refer people back to. A lot of work is renovation at the moment. I think it's purely a reflection of the market and what we're seeing in relation to building costs and, the slump that we're in at the moment. So a lot of people are choosing to renovate and extend over selling and finding another house or building new, especially when we have, scarce availability of land now too. And lots of people, there's only a particular type of person that wants to go and live in a subdivision and have a subdivision home, and anything that's designed outside of that doesn't really fit. So we're seeing lots of extensions, lots of renovations. Again, lots of people, I've been to quite a few initial meetings with clients who think they need or want an extension, and very clearly there's enough space in the home to rejig it first and put the energy and money into the house without extending, or you rearrange the house first, and then if you need to extend it, so only as required, rather than just going bloop, we need a fourth bedroom, so we're just going to tack it on to the end. When actually, if we look at the fundamentals of the house, we can actually go, oh well, there's this wasted space, there's that wasted space, we can readjust that, and then you don't need to extend. We get a spectrum. We get people who just want the nice kitchen and just want the extra bedroom and just want the bathroom and don't really care about the envelope. We see more people, we're more likely to get people to upgrade windows as the first thing, which is a great start. We've been to a few homes where they've retrofitted new PVC, and that's been great, but then we've had to undo some of that or move things around, so then they haven't really got the return of investment of that initially. We've had a house that's as is where is that needs a big reno, but they were just so cold in the house and they knew that a design project was going to take a while, so they just went and retrofitted and replaced all the joinery with UPVC, which was a substantial help for them and how they lived in the home. But now half of those windows had to come out with renovation, so it's a little bit like, can we reuse that one, can we put it over here? I'm not sure. So it's a bit of a shame, but I find it really tricky with renovations and extensions, because you've got the existing and a lot of the time people are really focused on the new, and what they can see, what's tangible. So trying to get them to upgrade insulation on a wall that we're not touching can often be a bit of a no-go, even though we try. So we work on the basis of, if we're touching that wall, let's do something about that. And it's an education point too, I guess. But then making sure that if we are doing that, we're looking at the ventilation side of things. We're looking at the house as a whole, rather than just trying to pack all the insulation in and then it not perform how they want it to perform. Especially with these old homes, right? They're not necessarily designed the best way for the sun or the ventilation in terms of natural sense anyway. And then we go and upgrade the joinery, and we go and upgrade the insulation and create more airtightness, then it's up to us as designers to ensure that we're actually talking to the clients about the ventilations as well, because it can obviously make a massive impact on the house and how it functions if we don't upgrade our ventilation systems as well.
Mould and those sorts of
I think media's helping with that in terms of, I think media is helping with that in terms of there's lots of cases coming through in the media now around mould issues, ventilation issues, or H1 code increases with our values, but not in ventilation and what that's doing, even roof space ventilation and things. So there is becoming a bit more awareness about it. Like for an example, designing a energy efficient home for my parents down in Central Otago at the moment, and it's the same adage of they're in their early to mid 60s, downsizing, want an energy efficient home, live in a very very cold in winter and very hot in summer climate. So they've been sold on the idea of energy efficiency and SIP panels and things for many years. So now they're able to actually do that and have a smaller footprint and live the way that they want to live, but knowing that they're coming into their retirement. So for them it's a real benefit to have an airtight, warm, dry, healthy home for the long-term investment of their retirement, and then making sure that they're not having to pour money into power bills, and so they can live a bit more sustainably on the site for hopefully a bit longer, being healthier too. And they've been really interesting because they've only lived in code minimum homes. So my parents are the quintessential, early 60s boomers in terms of we live in these homes and we have a fire, we have a log burner, and my mum just rams the wood in all day, every day, so that they're in the middle of winter, shorts and t-shirts inside. My mum can't have the house below a certain temperature. So it's been a really interesting conversation for them, because they keep reverting to, but we need a fireplace, but we need this heating, but we need this, but we need that. And having to keep reminding them of what we're building and why we're building it is in direct relation to that. And then we don't need that because we're doing this. So I've had to work really hard to get them to just build this thing and live in it before they decide if they need anything else. Because that's a big thing. Is we definitely want a fireplace. Cool. Well, there's all these reasons why we don't need one. If you do have one, this is the type of system we need. But actually, you'll probably find you're going to put one log in and then you have to open the windows. The whole air change per hour conversation around how heating and cooling works, and that fundamental building science of that, is really, really hard for people to understand until they live in something. We've done quite a few SIP panel super homes where the clients have wanted underfloor heating systems and have put the pipe work in, and then, because that's quite cheap to do in comparison to actually doing the commissioning, and then never commissioned it because of that whole contrasting mentality of, I know I'm building this for these reasons, but I can't quite understand that till I live in it, so I'm going to put provision in it just in case. So it's really interesting. It's can't embody it until they've experienced it in that physical sense. So I think there'd be a really decent benefit for some Airbnbs or some beautiful small buildings to be built as Airbnbs, as rentals and things like that, for people to go and have a weekend in and actually be in the spaces.
Test drive a super home.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a builder in Auckland who wants to get into, or is in the process of getting into energy efficiency, super home type buildings, more solar panel stuff. But he's already even not lived in one himself yet, but wants to build them. He's going, as his first project, is going to build his own house, and beside the house, like an office, but also a unit that he can rent out so that his clients can actually come and experience what it's like to live in or stay in one before they commit to building one and see it working in real life, which I think will be a game changer.
That's a great idea, yeah, I think.
Because having the open homes is great,
Yeah.
but we're only in the building for 15, 30 minutes. We can experience some things in that time, but we don't experience it in a general sense of how buildings perform or how it feels, overnight when you wake up, what's it like in the evenings, over a course of a couple of days. Yeah, absolutely. People are more concerned about, or that they're more happy to spend a lot of money on a ducted heat pump system than choosing the right designer and architect for their project and spending right there. Does that make sense? Like at the fundamental level, that's where you're going to get the biggest, best return, is choosing the right architect and designer for your project and spending what their fees are for the benefit that you're going to get from that. But they don't blink an eyelid over the $35,000 all the other componentry of a building and their small increments, or a big cost that might be more of a cost than design fees.
I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. They can save some money on design, and they think they can jump straight to building, and they just go and look at that.
Yeah, it's because their values or their project, the fundamental reason they're doing their project is quite different to the clients that we have and why they come to us versus Group Home Housing Company.
How do you see that?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next 10 to 15 years once these houses get a little bit older and they start to show a lot more about what's happening. It's like a health condition, right? What happens on our skin, and if it comes out and is exposed, then it's like the iceberg theory, right? Of like what's going on inside is obviously going to be bigger, and same with a house. When we start to see issues for the house wall, that starts to go, well, actually, it's more likely going to be, we're only seeing to the tip of the iceberg and what's in behind that. So there will likely be a lot of insurance claims or people being stuck with homes that they need to fix and they don't really know how or what's gone wrong and why. And I think that's going to lead to people actually thinking a lot more about what they're building or what's happened in their home, why it's happened in their home, and then going, well, how do we fix that? But that'll be interesting in terms of how insurance companies look at it, because from what we understand from our own personal experiences is that we see a leak in a home or we see moisture in a home, and you go and claim insurance. All they want to do is the cosmetic fix, not the fundamental issue behind it. And I think the more that insurance companies do that, the more issues we're going to keep having, because if we just keep masking all the time, we're just going to end up with a different version of leaky homes again. It's more internal rather than the envelope itself. And then it'll start that, in terms of media, and then people's thought process around what they're doing and questioning that. So there'll have to be a lot of renovations of those homes and rectifying them. But it'll be really interesting in terms of building science as to how you do that and what actually needs to change.
And not cosmetic.
how we live in homes
Yeah.
too. And I think a lot of people don't understand the type of home they live in, how they live, and how that is interconnected. Because, you know, it's the opposite version of like the house breathes, or like, you know, my house should breathe. No, but you need to understand at a human level what our implications, you know, like what living in the home does to the home. And then depending on the type of home and the construction of the home, how poorly ventilated it is or how insulated it is, affects its performance. And I think there's a whole raft of education around, you know, how many litres do we give off each human being, the heat from our appliances, what we're doing in our bathrooms, how we live, how we open windows, how we don't open windows, and what that actually does to our homes. Because when you educate yourself in terms of super homes and energy efficiency and passive principles, you understand a lot more about it's not just the house, it's how we live in it, and all of those systems interact together. It's not we have a house and that just works, and then we can come in as people because we emit moisture and we do all sorts of things, which kind of undoes a lot of the good.
I'm amazed at
Yeah.
No.
So that moisture will just be going into the walls and
Because they've
fabric of the
been in the, you know, like 50s and 60s kind of, you know, red brick state housey type homes where it wasn't so bad to dry your washing inside because the air is being replaced so many times an hour anyway. Then when you've got these new apartments and things, you've got a level of, you know, not great air tightness of course, Bob, but you know, they're not as leaky and as terrible as those types of homes were. New building code standards to a point, but then people aren't living in their homes any differently to those 50s and 60s red brick homes. And therefore we have the issue. And, you know, I think there's a massive gap in our code around ventilation. To me, that's the biggest issue we have at the moment.
and air tightness.
Yeah, it's how they live. And that's where I think ventilation can solve a whole lot of those issues where we don't need to rely on the human and how they live. The building is a system that ventilation is installed correctly and just works 24/7, and it doesn't matter if we open windows or we don't open windows.
Yeah.
Then that's going to solve the problem.
You're
Yeah, and if you don't have the ventilation, you don't have the, well, you know, minimum extraction, it was one, but then ventilation is another, right? And most people just think, oh, as long as I've got my kitchen extraction and my bathroom extraction, I'm fine. I don't need to open windows. You know, obviously there's so many homes that still don't have even that, but they're just like a hole sucking all the air out anyway. And where's that going to come from? And we go around in circles again.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
the factor for your clients?
I would like it to be a more significant factor than it is. We don't see many of our clients actually pushing for sustainable products at the moment. We recommend and help clients understand what could be a good choice for them and why, but most of the time it comes down to cost. Like we will go to the point of specifying products where we know, in terms of what type of insulation, what type of wrap, all those types of things. Claddings, we try and push for more sustainable options. Where we can specify where we have flexibility in projects, we will, but we'll often see that undone during the build process because of cost-saving mechanisms. Yeah, so we'll go to cheaper products that may not perform as great, just because it's going to save the client money, and they don't see it.
But there's also the thing of
People are liking the idea of it, and where the dollars stack up, they would choose the more environmentally friendly natural product over the not. But at the moment, lots of products in the sustainable natural type of products are usually higher. And when a client is factoring in, I've got $900K to spend, and I'm looking at, here's my kind of cost breakdown of my project, and I'm going, if I swap this out, what does that do? If I swap this in, what does that do? and sometimes internal products are more likely to be subbed out for cheaper, less sustainable, where they don't necessarily see or feel immediately the benefit. That can be quite a hard one to swallow.
How much?
Most of our clients are looking at $1,000 here, a couple $100 here, and stacking cost savings throughout a project. You know, where do they see the value in their project? Do they want to spend more on the kitchen and less over here, and weighing all that up? And it's often in the parts that they can't see that they might go, doesn't matter if I put that type of insulation in there because it's still going to give me my R value, and I'm never going to see that product, so I'm not going to think about how it's performing behind the walls or what's happening with the moisture in there.
Rather than a long-term, forever home, a place
and
to
that's
live.
that Kiwi mindset of, I'm going to maximise my budget so that I can build this house and live in it for 2 years and then sell it and move on, or I'm doing this just to increase my equity in my buildings rather than a long-term plan.
If it's a long materials.
Another good example of that would
be
be going back to my parents' place, looking at ventilation systems and things. Again, interesting because when we started this process, they knew nothing about ventilation systems for airtight buildings. And so I had to take them, my dad went off and did his own research, because I said, you go and do your own, you come back to me with questions, and you know, we can have a talk then, because I don't want to literally just tell you how it is, because you're going to go and do your research anyway, so it's kind of like wasting my time. And then he came back to me with, this company or that company, and like, okay, great, like you've started to really actually get the right information too. And then the builder, throughout the pricing process, went and found a couple of like cheaper products that could do similar, or maybe not quite as good, but still ventilation systems, still in the way that we want to use them. And it was really interesting because I definitely thought that my parents would go for the cheaper option, because it was still going to tick the boxes in terms of it does this, it does that, it does this, it does that. But it surprised me that they said, actually, we're building this house for our retirement. We don't want to save 10k by going to a cheaper ventilation system when we understand that the ventilation is really, really important, and we want to do this right. I was like, great, how good.
They listened.
Yeah.
I think we've always done it.
Oh, you don't need that. Don't be silly. Yeah. And it is, sometimes a builder can undermine us as designers as to what we're putting in a building and why. And we have to be really careful with that. And it's about the relationship with the builder and making sure that the right builder is selected for the project and helping the client in terms of that side of things. But if it's out of our control, then what we can control is the relationship with that builder and making sure they understand what we've specified in the building and why, and if they have any questions to come to us, not to the client, because there's so many times where you might rock up to a site visit or see a project at the end and there's a whole lot of things that have changed that you weren't privy to, and a lot of that can come down to the designer, the builder and the client, and that relationship being just a two-way street, not a three-way street. And making sure that we're kind of keeping up our consistent communication throughout the build is also important, because we can detail things to much as we want, but if it's not followed through in the build, then they can undo all of our good work, all of our, perceived performance of how we want the house to work. And we've had this case before where we've designed a sit panel home, it's been constructed as per the plans, and then the client calls up middle of winter, I'm having this issue, I'm having that issue. Okay, how are you first and foremost, ask the questions about how they're living in it, what ventilation system actually got installed, was it installed as per the plan, and unravelled a few things that weren't quite as they should have been. There was a couple of areas where this is quite a long time ago, and maybe a cowboy type builder, where there were a couple of areas where the airtight envelope wasn't airtight, as in we have a sit panel wall and then we have a roof cavity, so we needed to get into the roof cavity, so we just cut a hole in it. And then we didn't really we didn't really seal it back up. We just kind of fudged it. Or areas where the detailing around door sills and window jambs wasn't actually as per the plans, to the point where the home wasn't performing as they perceived it would be to their requirements.
Educating them.
Definitely.
Because they can also, if they're not the type of builder who's done energy efficiency or super home or passive principles before, they can often see a set of plans and go, oh, I don't need to do that, or I won't do it like this, I'll do it my way, where they don't understand what they're doing to the performance of the home if they aren't educated on it.
Yeah.
And the whole perception of like, oh, if I create an airtight house and then I have a ventilation system, I can't open my windows and doors then. Or can I still have all my doors open on a beautiful day? Is that going to ruin my my ecosystem of my house? Or then we have people come and, but passive houses, there's like no windows in them. We're like ugly houses or like real basic houses, or we can't have architectural flair if we're going to go passive. Or, we get that a lot, and having to educate people on how do we get an architectural home that looks architectural, that is architectural, that's beautiful, but still performs really well, and push them together. And lots of people at the moment still think, I have my architectural or I have my energy efficient, and are not seeing the gelling together. Sometimes that can be of like, what they've perceived as a passive house and what they've seen examples of, and then what they see is lots of glazing, so that mustn't be energy efficient. So I've got to go either way and have like little windows or no windows, or kind of a box with a little square in it.
I'm just dry homes, but actually
Cool dry homes.
Cooling is going to be just as important. So I don't know.
Cooling is equally important. Like, you can't have one without the other, right? And you can see that when you do PHPP modelling and you swap in a product, and then it might work for your heating, but it does the reverse for your cooling. And that's what people are missing at the moment, is like, but that actually all has to balance itself out. Education around how we design for that in mind, in terms of even just passive solar principles, right? In terms of our window positions and our eaves and our protection mechanisms of our glazing. But then what is our glazing? How does that perform in relation to those elements? And then how are we cooling? Because we can, when we're designing energy efficient super homes and things, there's still going to be some peaks and troughs, right? Where we might need a little bit of heating and we might need a little bit of cooling in the extremes of each of the seasons. But to what extent that is huge, in our reliance on the grid. If we're just going to whack a high wall heat pump in and just going to blast aircon into the building, is that really going to solve any problems? No. It's going to be a quick fix, but there's lots we can do around, people get stuck on the envelope itself, but it's how the building's designed, right? Its orientation, its protection against the elements, which is massive. And most of these units you see going up, building code minimum, but then there's no eaves and there's just these windows. We don't have, we talk about the recessed joinery and things like that, and all the little things that we can do to help. And that balance of, I want my view, but I don't want the gain, so how do I balance those issues out? And I think the more that we thermally model a house, the more we can understand the implications of our design and how we actually protect for overheating as well. Because I think in New Zealand we have that mentality of, we love summer and we're okay to be warm. We're okay for our buildings to overheat, but actually it's really uncomfortable.
And unhealthy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you come back to the same thing of what's the the biggest win? Our air tightness. It works in the reverse way, right? Helps to cool the houses too, to stop them from overheating.
Yeah.
So it's the system, right?
I've got a
You look to
kind of instinct on it.
Well, you even look at Australia, right? And every home's got shutters. They've got mechanisms over the windows so that they can allow the light in when they want to and shut it out when when they want to as well. But lots of Australian homes are, the likes of lots of walls and less windows, when Kiwi homes we want to be indoor-outdoor flow. But then we get the risk mitigation of, well, if you're going to do that, then most likely that's going to be a north-facing window or door.
It's where the view is.
Yeah, well, that's where the sun is, that's where the living space is, and when we have out the living, we want indoor-outdoor flow. So, it's just that never-ending cycle of, if we do one thing, we need to do that thing to counterbalance that, to then work it out as a whole.
Yeah. Just let us know what you got, and we can have a look at it.
Yeah, we've got Waimea Terrace, which could be a good one. It's a hybrid though, like there's been no PHP modelling. There's been no modelling on it, but we have a obviously character overlay area where Waimea Terrace over on the river. The site's quite high, but it's very narrow. Earthquake rebuild of an old bungalow that they'd lived in since the earthquakes, and it was
So that could be a
heinous.
Reno case study.
It's a new build.
Oh, it's a new build.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it was a sit panel floor, sit panel walls, and then because we're very narrow, like a metre off, like it's super narrow, so we're a metre off each boundary, and then we'd go up, and then recession planes, so we just offset gabled it to match the recession planes, and then the only way that we could get a couple of bedrooms in that roof space was to do a attic truss, form our 2 bedrooms and a bathroom within the attic trusses as the structure, and then so no sit panels as a roof structure, but the gable ends sit panels go all the way up, then our trusses in the middle, and then we plied it all over, wrapped it all around to create some level of airtightness as we could, to budget, but also what was actually functional and feasible for the site. And then so there's bat insulation in the ceiling and in the mid-floor structure too, but they have a ventilation system, and they have UPVC joinery and
I'm just sort of.
Yeah, we ended up having to we had a big gable overhang on the front of it to start with, but then that got taken off. But then we were like, oh, is that going to cause us issues with overheating? But then we're higher and we've got so much tree canopy. Was it really going to be an issue? Was it more privacy versus functionality of using that space? And then we ended up with the character overlay kind of wanting a type of veranda kind of vernacular. So we ended up with a freestanding kind of like outside the envelope timber structure, but that hasn't been built, but they might have to do that if anyone kind of catches them on the RC. But
we don't want to
really interesting around, kind of like so close to the neighbours and so close to the street, and how do we create them a house on the current, using the current, because if you push it too far back, then you're stuck between houses and you have a view, and all of that kind of the push-pull mechanisms of all of that, but allowing, trying to get them a house that fit, was actually to budget. Initially we only designed it with 140 framing and some wraps and bits and pieces to create some airtightness, and then throughout the pricing, the builder, they said, well, let's see how much it would cost to do such, because we really want to, but I told them that they probably couldn't do it for the budget. And then it was more, so it was outside budget, but it was only outside budget at a point where they were comfortable to take that next step, which was good.
Cool.
So we do find that sometimes we have those hybrid projects where we, for a whole lot of reasons, can't necessarily push all the way to, but we're probably based, but we're at the better mark rather than, completely best. But it's got to work, right? And these clients have been living in this, earthquake damaged bungalow that was, very cold and very damp. So they were going to get a superior product anyways. But it's been very cool to see.
Good.
Yeah.
It's great that practical for what people.
Yeah. One thing was an oversight though, we have the NK windows and doors, and then we have a sit panel floor. But then we didn't realise the sill profile of the NK windows and then the deck, and then so in like rebaiting into sit panel floor that didn't really work, and that was a bit of an oversight because the NK wasn't selected till like the end. And then the myriad of all those products together meant that that NK wasn't recessed down, so therefore when you get to the deck you get a little step
threshold.
over.
Yeah.
Which is less than ideal for the client, but one of those kind of is what it is at the same time. Good learnings, but
At least you've got the really good.
triple glazed and it's funny if I say to them, well, triple glazing is not necessarily better depending on the modelling. You might actually need different.
Yeah.
So the amount of education I do on triple glazing in UPVC versus, because people will automatically just think that if I go UPVC and if I go triple glazing it's going to be better. Like, not necessarily. Like, you have to look at your building as the building and then input the data and then see, because there could be some real benefits where you might need some more thermal gain through a window.
Yeah, or the idea that you apply it too much.
Yeah. Well, I always talk to clients about when I did my passive house studies and we had to do a case study on a square block of a house and play around with what joinery was actually going to be best for that project. And my one turned out that double glazed aluminium, thermally broken and recessed, outperformed the UPVC triple glazed counterpart.
Really?
And that was because of the the square meterage of the frame and the U value of that, and then what I actually needed for that window to perform in terms of its gains as well, and the light and how many times you stack a piece of glazing and the light and transparency, all that kind of stuff too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That I use it as a case study to be like, it's not cut and dry. It's you have to think about it and put some data on it to actually then decide if you're going to go that far. It's all good fundamentals.
Undervalue that.
People can save so much money. They can save huge money just by having the design done right from the start and talking all the efficiencies, and then being able to put in what they can, what they want to from there.
The challenge for you as a designer is how do you communicate that up front, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
That's right. You've just said it, and that to do it properly, to do it well.
It's and designers and architects are an investment. It's not a cost. That's what I try and help educate clients on is, you use us for all of these reasons and these benefits, and that in itself pays, that's an investment that has a, X times ROI on it.
Yeah, a lot of...
And if you want that type of house, great, you're not that client. But
Yeah.
if you value this and you want that, then we can talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Cool. Thank you.